Mark Hill from Greenlees. There's a lot of discussion at the moment about whether or not Leavers should vote for the Brexit Party, in other words, to vote against no deal, or vote in favour of no deal, or the Conservatives, in other words, to vote in favour, at least implicitly, of the Boris Johnson, shall we call it, compromise or treaty. And there is a question of whether or not the Boris Johnson treaty is a less damaging alternative to the Theresa May withdrawal agreement, and that treaty would have bound us very closely to the EU. And essentially the debate is whether the increased trade that the Theresa May deal would have allowed between the UK and the EU was worth the loss of sovereignty, and particularly the damage to things like fishing and our agriculture and food policies, and the relationship between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Now, people are torturing themselves and falling out on the Leave side about what essentially seems to me is a debate that doesn't really matter. It's sort of academic. The reason is that Leavers need to concentrate on what unites them. And what unites them is opposition to the European Union and opposition to those who have sponsored the European Union in the House of Commons. Think back to the documentary of Guy Verhofstadt's private office, conducted during the period of the negotiations of the withdrawal agreement, and the commentary of some of his staff. They were talking about Britain in very dismissive terms, including in the presence of British politicians such as Richard Corbett, MEP of the Labour Party, and various Liberals and Liberal Democrats and others. We have finally turned them, by which they meant the UK, we have finally turned them into a colony. And that was our plan from the very first moment. One of them cheered as they reached the end of the discussion over the Theresa May withdrawal agreement. We got rid of them. We kicked them out. It has happened. Our terms and conditions, said another Europhile officer in the Guy Verhofstadt office. Whatever our views about the Boris Johnson treaty, our opposition has to be against them and that psychology and that undemocracy. It has to be against those people that have sponsored this nonsense inside the House of Commons for the past 3.5 years, during which time the EU and its sponsors have tried to bore the British electorate into submission, tried to intimidate us, and tried to persuade us that we got it wrong in the first referendum. Our opposition has to be against those politicians that have sanctioned this, not looking at too fine a level of detail at our own argument. Just accept the fact that there are differences of opinion, but that doesn't stop us dealing collectively with our opponents.